Hello, I'm Cormac. You're listening to Queerly Beloved, supported by Amazon Music. In this series, I invite DJs and musicians, friends and allies from the LGBTQ+ community to talk about music, queerness, and anything else that shapes their unique story. It is my hope that in sharing our individual experiences, we can learn and grow and focus on our similarities rather than our differences. You can find all of the music mentioned in today's episode and each episode at the link in the episode description. In this episode, I'm talking with Fat Tony. Fat Tony is first and foremost a character and also a London DJ institution. His career spans 40 years. I first started listening to Tony back in the 90s. He was a resident at Trade at Turnmills, and he was really rather infamous then, and he's kind of famous now. He's just written a Sunday Times best-selling book, I Don't Take Requests. It's his life story, and also talks about his journey through addiction, which very nearly killed him. Tony was my first NA recovery sponsor, and we do talk in this episode about the steps. We are not talking about the band, we're talking about the 12 steps. Here's me in conversation with DJ Fat Tony. Tony, I want to start with you. Just, you can introduce yourself and tell me who you are and where you're from, for example.
Okay, so I'm DJ Fat Tony. I'm from London.
From London.
I'm actually from all over the place, but I currently reside in London. I was born in London. London is my home, but these days I fit it quite comfortably anywhere in the world, really.
I also think, like, when I see you online, it's very apparent, and I know you also a little bit personally, so I also see that you're very much an Irishman as well. You have a great sense of humour. Well,
I'm actually Irish, Scottish, and Italian descendant, all three. So, my sense of humour, I find the light in all dark situations, and you know what? Everything that I kind of find funny and I laugh at is because I've been through it myself. So if you can't, and as you say, if you can't laugh at yourself, then you're just wasting people's time. You're wasting your own time. I mean, I find humour in everything.
Yeah. That's important. I mean, you have to. I mean, that's what gets you through, isn't it?
Yeah. So also, it's that old factor of as soon as you find the fact that you can laugh at yourself or laugh at a situation, it takes the power out of it. You've overcome it. So through laughter, I overcome so many mental feats that go on in my head. I will wake up at 3 a.m. and by 6 a.m. I want to kill myself because I lie there and I will manifest this drama in my head which will catastrophize the world. And then by 6 a.m. I have to laugh at it and think, oh my God, what are you going on about? Because that's how it works.
I tell people in meetings that I wake up with Tragic FM playing. I have to kind of get my shit together and like change the station, because I wake up the same.
I used to be like that. I mean, the 3 a.m. thing is a different thing entirely because I can catastrophize things. But when I wake up first thing in the morning, I'm really blessed and really happy to be awake. I'm a morning person. I'm not a night person. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm a nightmare to have around in the morning. I'm one of those people that you're like, just shut the fuck up. And my boyfriend Stabby is so not a morning person. Him, Rini and Raph, the two dogs, will sleep through to like 11 or 12. And I'm like, oh, come on. It's like I call them the lazy gang, all three of them, because they just sleep in there. And I'm like, I'm up at 6 a.m. like making loads of noise.
It's one of those things you would never have guessed, like, until you get sober and in recovery that, you're a morning person. Like, I would never have said that about me either. Like,
no.
That I like getting up early.
I do. You know why? Because I think every day is a blessing and I want to make the most of that day. As soon as I wake up, I have to get up. Otherwise, I can sit on my phone on social media for an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's 2 hours wasted of my day looking at mundane rubbish. So so now I try not to do that. I try to get out of bed and get on with it.
So whereabouts in London did you grow up? Were you a South London kid?
Yeah, I grew up in Battersea. I was born in Pimlico. I was born on 4 streets away from here.
Wow.
Yeah, literally. When I moved back to Pimlico...
You're going full circle.
No, but I literally am like a homing pigeon. I walked to get a coffee in the mornings, and I walked past my grandmother's house, which is at the end of the street, which I can remember visiting at a really young age. And I always say good morning to her, because it's
Oh.
just, there's something really nice about looking at that flat where my dad grew up.
Were you the youngest in your family, or how many brothers and sisters?
I have two brothers. I have
The
one
middle, all
elder, one
right.
younger. Yeah, I'm the middle son.
And was there music in your house when you were growing up?
Always,
Always.
always. So my older brother thought he was going to be a DJ. My dad was one of these dads that always had the best stereos, had to have the
Okay.
newest equipment, had to have the newest satellite dish, had to have everything. And my dad would buy Marantz, I'd like swear by Marantz, which were these like that made amps and stuff like that. So my dad was like really into his music. So on a Sunday, we would wake up and there'd be music playing in the house all day. And then all week long, my brother would be playing his music. And then my little brother would be playing his music on speakers outside of the window on the roof. So there was always music in our house. So, but it's always been that way. Like my great grandmother was a classic pianist, and my grandmother also taught piano. So music's always been with us in our family.
Yeah, we had that too. My mum and dad were kind of into traditional Irish music, but then my brothers were into like, everything from the Smiths to the Cure and Depeche Mode and lots of.
Yeah.
So there was always music, and music in our house. You could say our house was a little bit like emotionally stunted, would be a polite way to say it. But everybody came together about music. So music was this kind of like very celebratory thing that everyone connected on. It was a bit magic in our house.
Well, it's like you can't have a party without music, right? And it's as simple as that. If you go get your hair cut in a barber shop and there's no music playing, it suddenly becomes a library. The music changes everything. And I think growing up in the dynamics of a household with music, it always takes the pressure off of the fact that you don't like where you're living, or you don't like your brothers, or you don't like certain things that are going on in the house. Music will change that because it's something that we can all relate to. And, although, my dad would like play everything from Elvis to Jim Reeves to Roy Orbison, all of that stuff. But then he also was playing all modern stuff as well. He got into, and my elder brother was always into lovers rock and soul music, which is where my sort of like love for early dance music came from. Vocals, meaningful songs.
There's a soulfulness in your sets always, yeah.
It's that connection with those words and words to songs. We make them relate to us. And they're not even the right song words. That's the beauty of listening. When you listen to a track, you take in what part you want to take into. You take it and you change those words to, it's the old, freed from desire, Trombelise moment. Because we all think, oh, yes, Trombelise, and it's not Trombelise. But, we make up words so that it appeals to us because that's what we sing. And I think that's what happens when you listen to music. When you start to feel music, it's a whole different ballgame. When you feel a track and it has the power to emotionally take you to the edge after 3 bars. There's certain music, like songs that will come on, and 3 bars in, I'm like, my hairs are standing on end. I'm an emotional wreck because I know what follows those 3 bars.
Yeah.
And that's feeling.
Absolutely. And then, all of that is like something that you don't see. It's something you feel, which is like just incredible, isn't it?
And it is. And I think that's why, when I got clean and I reconnected with music, and I reconnected with the real reason why I started going out in the first place. Because I didn't go out because I knew there would be drugs there or there was alcohol. I went out to the first time I ever went out was the most exciting thing because it was all about the music and it was all about the lights and it was all about that whole atmosphere, which drew me in. And the moment I went into that club was the minute that I decided this is my life. I never, ever want it to stop. I never want to leave the disco. And I kind of it's been my life. I've never left the fucking disco. Do you get what I mean? 47 years later, I'm still in the fucking disco,
God, I had such a similar experience, and I was very young, like maybe even 10 or 11, or my mum and dad were having like a wedding anniversary party. And there was a disco downstairs in the hotel where they were having their anniversary. And somehow I got into the disco for the last track of the night. And I remember it was Yaz, The Only Way Is Up.
You make me feel really old now, Cormac.
But, you know, I remember just witnessing it and being like, I don't exactly know what's going on here, but I know that this is in my future. Like having that feeling of like being shown something really special, something that was going to be very special for you.
Yeah, I mean, I walked into heaven and I was 15. And like, you know, the minute I walked in there, I was hit with that energy. It wasn't the music that knocked me off my feet. It was the energy of all of those men dancing, and that, you know, that energy was just it overcome me, and that was what I connected to. I connected with that. Whoa, this is the most amazing feeling I'd ever felt. Not only because it was all men or whatever else. I think it was a mixture of things, but really the energy that came off that dance floor was what really drew me in. I just was like, wow. And then suddenly to see these like lightning bolts going across the ceiling in neon, and the mirror balls with the neon planets that were wrapped around them, that they used to have at heaven, and all of that stuff that used to come down from the ceiling and go back up. It was just like, it was mind blowing. You know, It really was. It was just, and I just thought, that's it. This is where I belong.
Absolutely. I love it. And so you were the middle kid. They say very often that the middle kid is fighting a bit harder to get noticed. Would you say that was the case?
Well, especially in my house, because my older brother was always in trouble with the police. And my younger brother was God's gift. He was the golden child. So I was the middle son. So for me, I always had to create scenarios to get the attention, because my brother got all the attention because the police were always at the house, or he was always in court or whatever. So to me, I felt that I was neglected. So from a really young age, like the age of 3, I talk about it in my book, the fact that I had Munchausen's by proxy. I basically, not by proxy, but you know, I discovered at a really young age, I had a collapsed lung when I was 3. I went into hospital. And as my mum always says, that was the moment I changed. That was the moment everything changed for Tony. The minute I went into hospital, because suddenly I was getting attention. I was getting people who were visiting me. They were showing me unconditional love. It was all about me. So what happened from there was I learned, oh my God, if I'm ill, I'll get attention. So from that moment on, I'd become the most accident-prone child that ever lived. And there were moments where I would be ill all the time, and I wasn't really ill, but in my head, I thought I was. And for, you know, around the age of 13, 14, I was on crutches for a year and a half, pretending that I had something wrong with me. I had operations on my leg that I never needed. You know, it really is. You know, now I channel that commitment into other areas. But, you know, at that point in time, it was like about attention. It was about getting that attention. And the sad thing is, when you seek that kind of attention, other people see that as a weakness and they prey on it. That's life.
Were you a happy kid, though? Would you say like you were happy?
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Until about the age of 10, my life was amazing. I was having so much fun.
Yeah.
You know, because I was getting the attention I wanted. I was a gay son. I was running around the council estate in drag. I was doing all of those things that any healthy little gay child that is not being told he can't do what he does.
So they were supportive.
100%. My mum always supported me.
Oh, amazing.
My mum came to, we did a stage show, an evening with the other week at the Duke of York's Theatre, and my mum was on stage talking about how when I was 3, the doctor diagnosed me as gay in a hospital. And I was like, why did the doctor tell you I was gay? She went, well, you were sitting on a giraffe in the waiting room. My mum was like, you're telling everyone, get off my giraffe, move now, go away. And my mum said, I used to sit on buses saying, I don't belong on here, let's get a taxi.
Oh, I love that.
All of that stuff. And so the doctor said to my mum, you do know he's gay, right?
Wow.
So I was like diagnosed as gay. But, you know, I kind of, my mum and dad allowed me to be who I wanted to be. My dad kind of got stricter as I got older, and become more. When I used to leave the house in drag, my dad didn't like it because my dad feared I was going to be beaten up. My dad feared for my security around that stuff because I was laying myself so open. And you know, the 80s weren't exactly a loving time for our community. Growing up on an estate in Battersea, but I didn't really give a fuck about that. And my dad knew that. And so my dad's worry was something totally different. My dad worried about the way other people would treat me. So therefore he treated me in a way that kind of toughened me up. But I misread it. Yeah. So, but later on in my addiction, it suited me very well to think that he was homophobic when he wasn't. But, you know, through my using, when you become a victim within your using, and you want the world to feel sorry for you, and to, oh, poor Tony, his dad hated him, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. We use those things as excuses for our behaviours. And so for many years, I used to think that my dad really didn't like me because I was gay. My dad never had a problem with me being gay. I had the problem.
Is there a record that you could think of? I'm sure there's plenty, but is there a record you could think of from those early days that reminds you of those times?
Street Life by the Crusaders.
That's a good choice.
100%. It was the first 12-inch I ever bought. And I mean, I saved up and went down to Clapham Junction to the record shop on the hill. And it was in the window, and it was a blue 12-inch single with a car on it. And I was so obsessed by that track because the words meant everything to me. You know, you play the street life. It's the only life I know. Every night you play, you dance for that. You know, it was just the words just connected with me. And it was just like, it was such the first track that I ever really emotionally got into. It was like, you know, I had a real love affair with that track. I mean, the other one was when I was really young. I got my mum and dad to buy me Crocodile Rock by Elton John. And I remember crying all the time because my mum used to put it in the cupboard so I couldn't play it. Because I used to play it over and over and over again and it just annoyed the fuck out of them. So I used to have to ask my mum, "Mum, can I have my record?" And it would be in one of the top cupboards in the kitchen.
That's so crazy because those two records are kind of prophetic for you in a way, you know, like the street life thing, you know, like being the king of nightlife and all of that to come. And then, of course, you're friends with Elton. I mean, that's just insane. Like those two choices.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought it? I've told Elton that story many times as well. But, you know, the thing about it is it's just like back then as a kid, just to latch on to Crocodile Rock and be so obsessed by it.
Yeah.
You know, there's never been any point in my life where we never ever doubted the fact that I got an obsessive personality. You know, I would be obsessed by stuff and I would play it over and over and over again. And it's always been that way, really.
When we look back at kind of the formative nature of the 80s and all that it contributed to music and where we are now and how much of that came from the 80s, you know, but growing up queer at that time was notoriously not easy. Even in a metropolitan city like London, things were tough.
So I lived 10 minutes on a bus from Kings Road, Chelsea, which is where I decided to move to. Like, I got kicked out of school at 14. I suddenly got a job working in the King's Road. And at that point in time, it really was the social media of the world. People would walk up and down it to get photographed. It had just come from New Romantics. So everyone was on that street. So being gay on that street was okay, you know. It kind of really was all right. But beyond that street, it wasn't, you know. It kind of went to different levels. And, of course, you know, the 80s were, as I say, the first time I ever went to a club was in the 80s. And, you know, it was heaven. And the music and everything that went along with those times, because it wasn't only about new romantic music and electronic music. We suddenly were moving into this high energy area within the gay clubs.
Yeah.
And high energy was just the most amazing feeling ever to go into a club where everybody was on ether fan dancing. Because fan dancing went with high energy music.
I kind of feel like high energy is, you know, this moment where disco became more synthetic.
Yeah.
And like kind of more pumped up. And there's, that's really fucking exciting sound.
You know, I remember going to Heaven And there was this one track that they would play every Saturday, and it was by Nancy Nova, and it was The Force. It's the it's just mind blowing. And it was one of those tracks that I never really talk about because it's my track. It's my magic moment. It really was a music that defined my life at that point in time. You know, it was just so genius. I used to see Jeffrey Hinton there, and he had white dreadlocks at that point in time, like made out of wool. And he'd be in there on a Saturday, and everyone would be in there. And Rupert was there, Everett's where I used to meet Rupert, and everyone, and we'd all be at Heaven on a Saturday night. It's where I first met Freddie Mercury and those guys, which has been, you know, become a tag. I had the tagline for my fucking life, which I hate, because it was said in the conversation. You know, I met all of those people there, and it really was that music that drew us there. And, you know, High Energy was the early basis of house music, because it was that natural shift. Suddenly, you know, it all suddenly blended into one. So we had disco, which went into High Energy, which then suddenly went into house music.
You kind of very cleverly answered my question there, because I was going to ask you about, like, you know, like a queer record from those times. But that Nancy Nova track that you mentioned, I didn't know it. And when I saw your answers and I looked it up, I was like, how the fuck do I not know this record? It's amazing.
It's a genius record.
It's so good. I could play that now. In fact, we'll probably play that this weekend. So thanks for that. It's great.
Oh, you know for well it's going to be on there on Cormac's new playlist. As long as you credit me, I'll be happy.
I will definitely credit you.
Because these are the tracks, you know, they're doing a documentary version of my book for TV, and I had to do a cultural playlist that goes with the series. And instead of choosing all of, like, you know, the obvious tracks, I didn't want to do that. You know, I've been around a long time, and I know a lot of different music, and I don't need to make it obvious. I want to put the special ones in there. I think the tracks that should be in there for the 80s and that era are the Nancy Nova tracks, are the Boys Town Gang, Cruising the Streets.
I love that.
You know, all of those incredible tracks that really, really paved our lives. They really were. Eartha Kitt.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, insane. I remember seeing Eartha Kitt sing at Heaven, you know, doing on a Saturday night, doing a performance of I'm Your Man, or no, what was it called?
Waiting for My Man, or
Waiting for My Man. Yeah. She was laying on the stage long with her fan singing, "Where is my baby? I want it now." Yeah.
And also Divine played at Heaven, didn't he?
Divine played at Heaven so many times. So I first met Divine at Heaven. And Divine used to play at Heaven I saw Divine at Heaven 5 times. You can't change those feelings. Do you know what I mean? They were magical moments. You know, you would go and you would have these incredible stars playing at Heaven on a Saturday night, and it was men only.
But it's also one of those times, Tony. I mean, you mentioned like soulfulness, like High Energy also still had that, you know, in terms of vocals. But it's also a time when you look at the influence of that club music and how it then filtered into the charts and stuff.
Yeah.
It was again a time when queer music was at the height. You know, it was at the top of the mountain and it was trickling down.
Babe, everyone came to the gays for direction.
Yeah.
We really were. Everyone wanted to go to gay clubs. Everyone wanted to be around that kind of energy because that's where it all started.
Yes.
And it wasn't until like the 90s where straight people suddenly thought, okay, everyone's coming, the gays could come to our clubs. You know, we created this, we created that. Acid House really was that turning point where straight people suddenly thought they created this whole new feeling, this whole new like way of life. And they kind of tried to take the credit for it. But, you know, it was always about the gay dance floors. It was always what was being played on the gay scene. And at that point in time, most gay people looked the same. They had the 501s, the check shirts, the moustaches, the clone. And the clone really was such an incredible tribe. Such an incredible tribe. Because at that point in time, we either had punk, we had skinheads, right? We had mods, and we had clones. Clones are the ones that no one talks about. If you were to go back into history, people would talk about skinheads, they would talk about mods, and they would talk about new romantics. They don't talk about clones because it was always an underground movement. But there were so many fucking thousands of people in London alone that were clones. We had our own areas. Earls Court was a clone area. Everybody looked the colon. Everyone had colour-coded hankies that would be in a clone. There were so many amazing things because it was a tribe, and everyone as a gay man wanted to belong to that tribe. So the minute you could grow a moustache, you had a moustache. You could be a clone right now. You look very clonish.
I mean, you can kind of see it creeping back into aesthetics in clubs now. You can see it. I mean, the biggest clone that took it out of that and put it on stage was Freddie. Freddie looked super clone, no?
Yeah, he was a clone. Yeah, of course he was. And that was the whole ethos behind the way he looked, everything he did, down to the leather straps on his arms. That was it. But no one really related it to the clone because they were too busy talking about skinheads and everything else that went on. Because Freddie never openly came out as gay, they didn't link the two until much later on.
And then I guess also because, without social media and without that kind of cross-pollination of info, that was still, as you say, an underground thing. So taking it and putting it on stage, people maybe didn't make so much of the connection.
Of course they didn't, and also that, the clones weren't fighting outside football matches.
Yeah.
The clones weren't fighting on Brighton Beach every bank holiday like the mods were. Yeah. They weren't appearing in the papers because of that reason. Do you get what I'm saying to you? It wasn't until much later that the clone became apparent when AIDS hit. As soon as AIDS hit, that killed the clone. Suddenly, to have a moustache and a check shirt and keys hanging off your side and hankies put a target on your back, and suddenly you were an AIDS victim, suddenly you were an AIDS carrier, suddenly you were a part of that community that were spreading the virus.
Yes.
That whole desire to suddenly fit into a community was shattered because no one knew how to cope with what was going on. And especially with the media and the pitchfork and torches that were being lit to drive us out of our community and to put the blame on us for AIDS. It changed everything. Music changed. Everything changed.
Did the clubs get quieter then? Or did people still try and come together to find some kind of strength?
What happened was there's suddenly become this revolution within the clubs. People started to dress up more. People started to go out more and started to become themselves. But also what happened was you're talking about, suddenly Heaven on a Saturday night, the men only thing changed. Everything started to change gradually. Within the gay community, you could sleep with whoever you wanted to. You could be who you wanted to be. Suddenly that no longer existed and that was taken from us. And we suddenly were being shunned and finger pointing. And then suddenly come around 1990, 91, when it really started to hit London hard. Between 91 and 95 was the worst 5 years for London because everyone started dying.
Yeah.
Thinking 93, 94 was the worst kind of years for me because that's when I lost everyone around me. I lost, I'd say, 80% of my peer group. My boyfriend passed in 95.
Was that Tom?
Yeah, that was Tom Hammond, yeah. He passed in 95.
I remember you talking about him.
The effect that had on my life. My life spiraled out of control after that because it was already there. It was already spiraling. But, something of that magnitude to come along and to annihilate me. And I went into a complete state of denial. I went into this complete... I remember going to visit Tom in the hospice. And I just got my record deal. I just bought my house. Career-wise, it was a magical time. I'd signed to Big Life Records. I had this massive deal. And I remember giving Tom the CD in the hospital. And 3 months later, he'd passed away. And it wasn't a happy time, which it should have been.
And also, just the shame around it and the way it was being portrayed in the media. I mean, losing your friends like that, that's something that most people face in old age, and to have that happen at such an early time in life and then just have no support around it. It's like...
Well, he came home in 1990 and said to me, I've got something to tell you. And I was like, what? He said, I've been diagnosed. You need to go and get checked. And I was like, oh, okay. I just shrugged it off because I was in denial around it. And that year we split up and then I moved 3 doors along to Bar Italia. And watched him die over the course of 3 years. I watched him deteriorate. And, my life just completely spiraled out of all control at that point in time.
It's so heartbreaking. It makes me think, like in your 20s, you're kind of paying the credit card bill for your teens. And in your 30s, you're kind of paying the credit card bill for what happened in your 20s. At some point, we have to face the music. And events like that, when you start to unravel, everything starts to come up and needs addressing. It's like that's when the cracks start to show.
I literally was like the biggest fucking slut at that time. My whole life was my sex addiction overtook my drug addiction at that point in time. And I just thought, I'm going to have the best time, because you really thought that at the moment in time you were on borrowed time. And, we had such amazing spaces in London at that point in time. We had Bloomsbury Square, we had Russell Square, we had all these amazing.
Remember them both.
Yeah, of course. And, you'd go out clubbing and you'd walk along to Bloomsbury Square or Russell Square or Clapham Common or any of those places. And the night would continue. And of course, it was always going to end in tears.
It's interesting, like how all of that kind of ties in with the music of the time as well. And, to think about Divine, to think about high energy, to think about heaven at those times, you can't separate it from the AIDS crisis.
No, you can't, and you shouldn't. And I think
it's like a soundtrack of it.
It really is. Shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
Take it like a man.
Take it like a man was just, it was so good.
We want to talk to you kind of about the birth of house music in London, and if there's a record from that time that kind of makes you think of that time or that sums up that time for you.
Yeah, Daryl Pandy, Love Can't Turn Around, was really that crossover track that suddenly changed how we saw house music.
Another soulful vocal.
This is how it started. I was broken hearted. I want you, baby.
It's amazing.
Just the best. It was just like, but to see Daryl perform that was just breathtaking, because it was just like this force, this incredible tsunami of a man singing this new kind of high energy. And what it did was it was that first turning point for house music, in that sense of where it crossed over into the gay clubs, and suddenly it was like, wow, this is a new form of high energy. I was very fortunate at that point in time to be DJing and being a part of all of that. I did a club on a Monday night called Jungle. Kevin Mullins and Steve Swindle started running it. And I got a job there with an amazing DJ called Colin Favor. Colin hated me because I wasn't your kind of DJ. I came and I played music. Colin was a DJ that, used to count beats, and it was all about his life and blah, 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 blah. And he made it. He was like one of those DMC guys. So it was all about, like, this is my profession.
Technique.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
I used to turn up and I used to play the music, and people loved me because of what I was doing and how I did it. And that's how I started, because, there was another great DJ from DMC as well called Ian Dewhurst. And Ian was the DJ at the Playground, which was Rusty Egan and Steve Strange night at the Lyceum. And every week I would say the music shit, because I worked on the door, and I'd say, people are leaving. And Rusty would be like, why are they leaving? I said, because everyone's saying the music shit. And that's how I started DJing. So Rusty was like, why are they saying it shit? I said, anyone could do it. He said, if you can do it, you do it. So the next week I turned up with 4 records, which was Pink Cadillac by Natalie Cole. There was Divine, ABC, 12-inch, and Who's Zooming Who by Aretha Franklin. That was it. Those 4 track records changed my life forever.
All of them have a soul feeling. I mean, ABC were like white boy soul.
Totally. So I turned up with those records, and of course Ian got the sack because I took over. The old cuckoo in the nest as such. And that was it. And within 2 months I had a residency in New York.
It really makes me think about, something I learned, through my addiction and through depression also, was that how you feel when you DJ is really fucking important. It's almost as important as what you play, because people you transmute something and transmit something and people feel it. And it makes me think of him, you know, being super serious and focused on technique and you really enjoying yourself and people connecting with it.
Because I used to play the same record 3 or 4 times a night. They were played at the moment they were meant to be played. They weren't a part of a set. Colin would do sets. All of those DJs would do sets. They would pre-work out their set before they even went out of the house. I would just turn up and I would read that crowd. And that's what I've always done. And I read a crowd. I've never, ever sat and pre-planned anything. I used to take 2 big record boxes of vinyl, and what I played. Whereas that lot all used to like be like, oh, this is all BPM matching the whole set and blah, blah, blah. I was all over the shop. But that's why it worked, because people loved it. It was all about the moment.
Yeah, I think you can learn technique, but you can't learn that. You have to be a raver first, or someone that's been on the dance floor first, and you have to feel music, and then you have that intuitiveness.
Yeah.
How long after your first set were you at Trade then? Because Trade for me is where I got to know Fat Tony.
I started doing the WAG. I started running the WAG on Saturday nights, which was called Fatitude at the WAG and Attitude at the WAG and Fat Saturdays at the WAG. Then I moved from there and I did the Limelight. Then Acid House came along and which changed everything. And I started doing all the big fields and everything, you know, DJing at nearly every rave. If you look at old rave flyers, I'm on every one of them, you know, and did all of those for years. And then, you know, from the WAG, we used to go to Trade, and it was really hard house at that point in time. And then one weekend, Lawrence was like, okay, they're starting this new room called Trade Light with the Sharp Boys. And it didn't really take off straight away, Trade Light. And then I started playing at Trade Light. And of course, like the Cuckoo, took over, got rid of the Sharp Boys rather quickly. Around 1991, it kind of like came into itself.
I mean, I was visiting London then in 96. I moved there in 97. But I had gone there and I was more into like the hard house sound in the main room. And I have this friend, Dario, who I'm still very good friends with. I don't know if you know Dario, but Dario used to go to Trade like in full Marilyn Monroe drag, like she'd just got out of the shower. So she would have like a bathrobe and the hair and the towel and earrings, like one of those Trade characters.
Yeah.
And I just loved Dario, and Dario would be like, you have to come into the light lounge, come into the light lounge. You know, there was a franticness to Trade, and a lot of that was because of the franticness in your booth, quite frankly. It was like, you know, we talk about how you feel in the booth, but there was a chaos going on in there that
it was,
it was infectious. People, I mean, I get a rush talking about it, but there was just a wildness. I don't know if the wildness was fueling your wildness or you were fueling its wildness, but there was a wildness.
See, I was battling what was going on in the other room. As I said in this Tony DeVitt documentary before, there wasn't room for 2 Tonys.
Yeah.
In my eyes, you had Tony DeVitt, which everyone loved, and then there was me, and I just thought, right, okay, we need to turn this around. It's not about the hard house anymore. We need to get them all in it. And we built Trade Light, and it turned into this phenomenon of where you could go and you could hear those incredible soulful songs. But also, you know, it had this edge about it that we weren't afraid to play Your Song by Elton John in the middle of the night in its entirety. All of those magical moments I wasn't scared of doing because I had no inhibition. I didn't care about what anyone thought. I was there, and the more drugs I took, the more I went on that tangent and took people on this different level. And, you know, I wanted all of you guys to be as high as I was and as insane as I was. You know, I used to turn the music off, as you know, no K, no play. And I'd turn the music off and stand in the DJ box until people brought me cocaine. And then I put the music back on.
Looking back on it, that Your Song moment, I don't know if that happened more than once, but when you did that, I think that taught me as a DJ to take risks because there was something so crazy about that. But everybody just went, like, you stopped the music and you played Elton John, and it was insane.
Because I'd listened to it that day and I was thinking, I'm going to play this tonight and leave my set. And everyone was like, you're mental. And I was like, I don't care.
I remember vaguely someone finishing their set and you taking their record and maybe kind of
throwing it. Yeah, throwing it into the ground all the time. But anyone who knew I was coming on hated to play before me because they knew that I would take the needle off their record, put my record on and put the needle on and just carry on and just like, thanks, bye, get out.
That was like if he was coming, because there would be all these rumors circulating like, is Fat Tony coming? Fat Tony's in hospital. Fat Tony's dead.
Yeah.
That was a rumor at one point.
Yeah, of course.
And then you would show up like Lazarus.
I remember coming out of trade one morning and the cab driver saying to me, oh my God, I heard you were dead. And I was like, no, I'm very much alive.
You can't design those moments. That's what zeitgeist is, isn't it? Like, you can say, okay, I want to have a successful club, but you can't design like that, all those factors that come in and make London the place to be in that moment.
No, you can't, because it's magic. And if you tried to premeditate that, it would never work.
How do you think the industry from then has changed to now? Because, when we talk about like Frisbee and records and stuff, I had a DJ from that era tell me, there was a lot of viciousness between DJs, a lot of competition. And I feel now, especially on the gay scene or the queer scene, there's a lot of support. I mean, I think we kind of support our own these days.
I think we do support our own. And I mean, for me, I think the most important thing that I can possibly do is support up and coming DJs by giving them work. That I'm not scared. You see, the thing was back then, people were scared that someone was going to take their place. Yeah. So that's where the viciousness came in. I mean, I had this running like drama with the Sharp Boys for many years. I used to piss in their record box. I used to, you name it, I did it. Because I lived in a place of fear that someone was going to be better than I was, or somebody take my role as, the most fucked up person on the planet. So that there was a lot of that then. But today I think that I know no one's going to come and take my job. I know no one's going to replace me because I am who I am and I do what I do. I think that the moment that crosses over and you start to love what you do as a person, as a DJ, you start to believe in yourself. You then suddenly, that belief moves on to shifts to other people. You start believing in them. And I think that I'm very blessed the job that I do in Ibiza every other weekend or wherever I am in the world, it's nothing but love from other DJs. Don't get me wrong. You still get dirty looks from resident DJs in clubs in Palma or in Mykonos because they're the ones that are feared up that you're going to take their job. Or they're like, oh, he's not as good as you. Why are they paying him that kind of money when he's not? He's mixing slightly off. You get that kind of dynamic. But you get from the real ones that believe in themselves and know their worth, you don't get that energy. That energy doesn't exist.
It's beautifully put. I had a lovely conversation with Honey. I don't think she would mind me saying about, and it really corresponds to this chat, this early love of music and then this love of community, this love of clubs and all that it gives us as queer people. And then, the love that it gives you in times of crisis. The job is, in a way, a job of love.
It really is.
That all explodes when you finally love yourself.
When you're in those moments, you've been to those moments. It was like, say Larry, for instance. When I used to go to Garage and we'd go, me, George and all that, and we went there one night with Diana Ross and we're in the DJ box with Larry and Diana Ross.
Insane.
All those insane things. And then when Larry moved to London and Larry got ill, he had very few friends that really wanted to look after him. He was living with his sisters and there was a really magical time in the sense that there really was a lot of love going on in the world for other DJs and other people. I remember bringing Frankie to London. Frankie Knuckles, the first time he ever came to London was with me and DJ'd with me. And it was just like, I've had that conversation with Honey before. And, there's so much magic happening because it comes from a place of love and not a place of fear. And I think that still continues today. Because we can look up to DJs, right? We can look up to people and put them on these pedestals. And when we meet them and they turn out to be the biggest arsehole in the fucking world, that shatters our beliefs. And we kind of then suddenly, it becomes trauma. And then we pass that trauma on to the next big DJ because we think they're going to treat us the same way. And it's not like that. And as soon as you meet someone that shatters that image and you think, oh my God, what a lovely person.
Yes.
Because they're at ease with themselves.
Yeah.
Someone like Honey, right? Honey doesn't need to impress you because Honey is Honey, right?
Yeah.
What you expect of Honey is your business, right?
Yes.
What Honey gives you is her business.
Absolutely.
And that's where people, because Today, when people meet me, they want to take pictures with me. They want to. I'm very blessed, Cormac. I get stopped 30, 40 times at the airport. You know, it's insane. And people want to take photos. Whereas before, I would run away from that. But now I'm so blessed that someone wants to stop me and tell me they love me or tell me they read my book or they love what I do and they want to take a picture with me. That is a fucking blessing.
Talking about how things maybe have changed in the scene and people supporting each other. And I mean, with all that's going on in the world now and, you know, Instagram and social media, they create these little micro aggressive arguments and people pointing fingers. And I'm of the opinion, you know, if you're under the LGBTQ bracket and you're pointing the finger at someone else in that bracket, you're part of the problem. Like, there's fucking bigger shit to fry and we need to come together to do that. It's very recovery. We need to focus on the similarities and not the differences.
But the thing is, people aren't in recovery. And you know, the worst ones really could benefit from being in recovery and having a set of 12 steps just to change their outlook on how they see other people and how they perceive the fact that they think it's their business what other people do. You know, within our community right now, we're probably at an all-time low. We really are, because there's so many areas of our community that are at each other's throats. And what that does is shows the world that we're weak, right?
Absolutely.
When there's a unity between our community, we're a strong force. As soon as one part of that community fights another part of that community, suddenly there's a big fucking crack in it, which allows hatred, allows fear to seep through.
We talked a lot about the joy of music, Tony, and you know, you've brought a lot of joy to people with your music. It blows my mind to think those times in trade of all the magic that you're creating, and yet you're in the booth full of fear that you're not enough. I mean, it makes sense to me, but it's just mind-blowing because I've done that for myself, you know, but hearing it from the outside, it's just like, you've obviously had tough times, very tough times. Like, music, I guess, plays an important part in supporting you through that. You know, when you went to rehab, for example, were you listening to music?
There's one track that changed my life. Yeah, again, it goes back to that vocal thing again. And it was the Soldiers of Twilight, Believe. And the words to it, you know, I ended my book with actually saying in it, when we start to believe we're halfway there.
Yeah.
And it really, look, my ears went straight up on end as soon as I said that. Because the words to that song just changed everything for me. It gave me hope. As soon as you get hope, suddenly belief comes into play. And whenever I'm at a low point or I'm in a happy point, or I have these moments and I will just play it. And it has the most magical feeling for me because it really was that caterpillar into a butterfly thing that made me change. It showed me that I could change. And the words to it, you know, it's like just everything.
Yeah, I'm going to link all of the music that you mentioned to a playlist. But yeah, it's that line in it of, you know, if you believe you're halfway there. It's also very steps, isn't it? Like step 2, like came to believe. And it makes me think, you know, I grew up in a different situation than you. I grew up in a lot of religious homophobia and had to hide a lot. And, you know, the thing with hiding your sexuality, then it's very clever and easy to hide your addiction because you're already like really great at hiding things. And the thing that music gave me was this lifeline, this idea of a future, a fantasy future that would be better. And it sounds like that was happening for you as well in rehab.
You know, it really was, because it was like I literally was looking for a spiritual awakening. And they kept saying to me, oh, one day you'll have a spiritual awakening. And I really thought, like, you know, a spiritual awakening was like this suddenly, like this big burst of light. And it wasn't, you know, that track really was like a spiritual awakening because it suddenly it gave me a purpose to what I was in rehab for. I knew I was there to get clean. I knew I wanted a new way of life. I didn't know how to get one. I was so feared up. My idea of going to rehab was I was going to get kicked out and I was going to come back to London and say, well, I tried. And that was it. I could carry on, you know, and suddenly listening to the words of it, it gave me a realization that life could be beautiful. And that's the power of music. That is the power of music. And that reconnection to music really came from that one track. Because, you know, they were saying, "Oh, you can't be a DJ when you leave here. You can't be in that world." And I was like, and they kept saying, "You can't go back to London, and you can't go back to DJing." And I've said this quite a lot, and you can't go back to that relationship. And I said at the time, I'm not going back to any of it. I'm going forward. And I've always gone forward from that moment on, and suddenly rekindled that connection to music. Music was no longer a ways and means to get more. Music was no longer just a way to earn money to buy drugs. Music was become the primary drug again. When I first went out, I was drawn to the feeling that music, and to get that feeling back was my prime directive. I thought, okay, this is going to be my life. I want that feeling of the first time I ever went out again.
It's also changing. There's a mental shift there of like, all those years where you go out and it's about take. And then there's that shift of like going into that environment and being like, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can contribute? And for me, that's a game shifter. And people often ask me as a sober person, how do you navigate being sober in your job, in other people's social lives? And I always think it's because I'm there to contribute.
Well, it's that crossover line between suddenly being a bottom all your life and suddenly then becoming a top, right? It's a complete shift, right? Because as a bottom, we lay there and we take it and we take it and we take it. We're really good at taking it. And then suddenly, you've got this new release of life where you're a top and you're actually, right, I'm going to be the best top there fucking is. And, you suddenly get rhythm and you suddenly get this new lease of life. And that's it, right? That is it.
I love it. Tony, I'm interested as well about this thing called intergenerationality. It sounds very like a big word, but really, when we grow up, especially considering the AIDS crisis that you mentioned, we didn't really have like gay mums and dads to learn from or gay grandparents to learn from. And, you've become, whether you like it or not, or whether you take it or not, there's a mentor element to you, certainly for me, in that, you were a big part of me getting sober. And I'm so grateful for that.
I'm more grateful to you for being in my life at that point, because what happens is when you sponsor or you work with someone or you get to know someone in early recovery, you learn so many lessons about yourself from that person. Although the sponsee or the newcomer thinks that they're learning from you, it's the other way around as well, because it's a two-way street. And that's what sponsees should be, a two-way street. Because as much as you learn from me, I'm learning from you, because I see my mistakes within what you do. So I always think that you're blessed when you have that dynamic with anyone, because it really does show you what life's about and where you are at in life. Some days I will talk to a sponsee on the phone and I just get off the phone and I just think, fuck, man. Like, I really needed that conversation today. And he's probably at the other end of the phone thinking exactly the same, hopefully, because that's how it works.
And it makes you walk the walk as well, doesn't it? Because you can't really
100%.
Like, it keeps it fresh for you as well. But this thing of mentorship, I mean, I think, you mentioned at the start of the chat about sharing your story. I think it's vitally important that you share your story, not only, around music. We need to know the history of music, but especially around addiction and what can happen and how things can turn around, because people talk about COVID and pandemics, but we also have a crisis around drug use within our community.
Majorly.
And the amount of deaths that it causes.
Majorly. And, the more outspoken we are and the more of a light, that's the way we should be. We should be shining beacons to all of those people in their darkest moments. So for me, today, I'm so open about my recovery on every platform that I have, because it's not about putting messages in bottles. It's about writing the fucking message in the sky. Because, only one person's going to find that message in a bottle. Fuck that shit. That's great. Don't get me wrong. If one person finds the message, then it's a success. But you know what? There's a bigger picture. And it's about painting that bigger picture so that everyone can see it. So for me, I'm very vocal and I'm very honest about my recovery, because without it, I would be dead. But also, I would not be in the position I'm in. Because I get so many messages daily on my Instagram that I respond to every message. And people go, oh my God, you must be mad. And I'm like, no, because if someone's taken the time to message me about addiction
Mm-hmm.
or about a family member, I know how hard it is just to say those words, let alone fucking type them.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, every time
Mm-hmm.
someone messages me, that is a cry for help. And if it wasn't for me having that one cry for help, I would be dead now. And for that one person to listen to me at that right moment, at that God-given moment that changed my life forever. So I have to be that person. I have to put myself in that position. And I think that the more people are honest about their addiction and the more, you know, don't have that internalized shame around where they come from or what they've done, and relishing the fact of where they are and not where they were, is a remarkable thing. And I think that we all have a platform and we should use that platform to the best of our ability.
And share the shitty stuff, you know, because on social media, that's not
No,
happening.
let the world know what bad day you're having. Let people know that, you know, life on life's terms is fucking hard, but don't make it harder. Don't sit with it and not mention it. If you don't open your mouth, you don't get fed.
I don't want to blow too much smoke up your butt, but, you know, all of the craftiness and all of the wheeling and dealing and the hiding and the secrets, there's so much fucking work goes into that. You know, there's so much
exhausting.
Work. It's exhausting, but there's a big intelligence there, and you've kind of flipped it and put it out into the world in a really positive way. I mean, it's not my business to be proud of you, but I'm very proud.
No, you know what? Thank you, Cormac, because I love you, and you know, you tell me all the time, and you're one of these people that's always stayed in touch. And you always send me messages, pictures of dogs, and I love that about you, Cormac. No, but I do. I love that. You know, that's a testament to where you're at in life. When I look at you, I just see Cormac, and I see this really, like, even though you're wearing yellow today, but there is always this yellow glow about you, around you, which is kind of like your recovery and where you're at in life shines through. And I just think it's a really beautiful thing to see. And I'm very proud to have been a part of it.
That's so lovely. I'm going to bring us back into the present moment. What is a record that you're playing at the moment that is blowing things up when you're playing it out?
There's this track called "Follow Me," which is just like follow me to the rabbit hole. It's so good.
You love a vocal.
I do, but it's got
I love a vocal too.
It's such a good kick in it, and it just goes into like verging on techno at points. It's so fucking genius. It's an exquisite house track. It really is.
Good. I'm gonna add it to the playlist. Tony, I just love talking to you. I could talk to you for ages, and I appreciate it so much that you would take the time. Will you tell us a little bit about where they can buy the book, the #1 bestseller on Amazon? Tell us about the art exhibition. Tell us about the documentary.
My Sunday Times best-selling book. No, you know, it's just come out in paperback, and you know, it's in every airport. And
yes.
I'm getting so many people messaging every day about it, and it's mad. So, I mean, I've been for 3 days doing my new role as Sunday Times travel writer.
Amazing.
What the fuck? I'm doing a whole review of Ibiza this summer. I'm staying in nearly all the hotels I've done. We're doing the highs and the come downs of Ibiza from the eyes of a DJ.
Oh, really? How's the art exhibition going?
It's amazing. It ended.
I want to come see it.
It ended 2 days ago. We're going to move it. It's going to go somewhere else. The whole thing about it was, yet again, about using our platforms to send people to rehab. So proceeds from the sale of the art was going to send someone to rehab, and we can send a lot of people to rehab. And the thing about it is that we did a play on just recovery, because people will say to you, oh, you're still a cunt, or you used to be fun. So we did all that big AA books in glass cases with "you still a cunt" written on in gold leaf, and all of these things. And we did all this stuff about recovery and what people say to you, and about the inner child. So we built an AA meeting in the middle of the room, or an AA meeting, whatever you want to relate it to. And we had all of these Sesame Street characters. Because when you're a kid, you get given Winnie the Pooh or these teddy bears to hug, to go to bed with. And they become your heroes, and they become your crutch. Suddenly you get to 3 or 4 and you discover McDonald's and sugar and iPads. Winnie the Pooh's forgotten about. And that rejection can then lead to a life of wanting to be loved, and which will lead to addiction. So we used Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and all those characters and put them into this meeting, because they've all had hard lives. What happens to them when you've rejected them? They go to meet. They all end up in the same place.
Oh,
so that's why
so cute.
That's why we built them, and we built these life-size characters of an alcoholic Winnie the Pooh, and so.
Who misses his friend. That's so
Yeah,
cute.
it's been a massive success. I'm really happy about it.
Tony, I love you so much and I hope to see you soon.
You will see me soon.
Would you give your dog and your mum a wee squeeze? I love your mum as well. She's very cute.
Of course I will.
You're such a blessing. Thank you. Lots of love.
See you later, gorgeous. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Queerly Beloved with me, Cormac. You can find the playlist of all the music featured in today's episode in the episode description. And while you're there, please do hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my conversations with other talented people. A big thank you to Michael Lane, my producer, my manager, Melissa Taylor at Tailored Communication, and of course to Amazon Music for their support. Take care of yourself. All the best. Bye.